Yes, people, welcome back to the channel, and things are moving in terms of the Manchester United managerial situation. We've obviously got a game later on, so the focus will be and should be on that. Burnley tonight, 8:15. Darren Fletcher, what can he muster up? But he's the current interim manager, but all the noise, as you've been seeing, is on who will be the caretaker manager for Manchester United for the rest of the following 6 or so months. And you've seen who's been mentioned. It's Ole Gunnar Solskjær and Michael Carrick. That seems to be the definitive two-man shortlist right now, with a lot of the reported leaning towards a return for Ole Gunnar Solskjær, who, to be fair, I remember at the time, that losing run, or that poor run of form that he had at the latter stage of his tenure, obviously, which culminated in the 4-1 loss away to Watford, I believe. I think Van der Beek might have scored in that game, a consolation goal. And I said, at that time, I was like, sack him. He's got a glass ceiling. It's not working. It was very derailed at the time. And I thought there was a lot of revisionism on his tenure after that. But to be fair, when I've looked at the managers that have been at United after that, in terms of, or as it attains to, Erik ten Hag, followed by obviously Ruben Amorim. You had obviously a brief stint of Ragnick as well. I think Ole's tenure was the last time Manchester United actually felt like Manchester United. And it might sound heavily sentimental, which is something that I don't usually do. I'm usually quite matter of fact, as you know. But I think we're one of these clubs in the world where that does matter. The fan base is so big, it can be quite volatile, and it's so huge, where there's a lot of power. The fan base and the feel-good factor does contribute to Manchester United and its successes. I'm not saying it's massively, but I'm saying it's definitely a factor. There needs to be that perfect synergy between the fans and the football club, and obviously the boardroom, and then to the academy as well. It's something that's quite family orientated and all encompassing, that needs to be all working as one. And I think it's just been heavily divisive. The fan base probably always will be. When you're one of the biggest clubs in the world, when the scrutiny is so high, when the media coverage is the way it is, that's always going to be the case. But I think there has been, I think the last two managers have actually helped me learn that. It's a word that's annoyed a lot of people in terms of DNA. Well, DNA and ethos at Manchester United is a genuine, real, tangible thing. And I think the last two managers that we've employed haven't been that, and they haven't been Manchester United managers for me. And obviously hindsight is always 20/20. But I think there is, when you can think of recent times, we didn't win silverware under Ole either, and we did under Erik ten Hag, but the last time you kind of like watched the Manchester United and you had the strongest connection to a team, it did feel like the periods when Ole was managing. You can still think he's probably not an upper echelon elite manager or an elite gaffer. He's definitely decent. He's definitely good enough, and he's shown himself to be that. I know he's had a bit of an off-colour stint at Besiktas, and he's been pretty much quite heavily out of management since. We did see some good football. We saw a record-breaking away run as well. We saw big results at the Parc de France and PSG. We saw free-flowing, counter-attacking, goal-scoring football, things that was pretty much epitomised a lot of the principles and successes that Manchester United had through Sir Alex Ferguson back to obviously Matt Busby as well. And one thing that happened was Pep Guardiola obviously becoming the sensation that he did at Barcelona, and then bringing it to Bayern Munich and then Man City, and this rise of positional play. And then all you've got right now across Europe is a lot of Pep lights, and he's kind of been the pillar for this next evolution of football. And I think Manchester United, with the last 2 appointments, have tried to kind of lean into that, going for these kind of hipster managers with their own stubborn ideals. And they've just not married well with Manchester United. And then it's ultimately resulted in a car crash. Obviously, you've also got the factor of recruitment and incompetency at boardroom level, which is definitely a factor. It's not like there's one or two reasons for it. There's a multitude of variables that have caused United to be as inadequate and as incompetent as it's been for about 10, 15 years now since Ferguson. But when I'm looking at things managerially, it's like I'm not against Ole being caretaker manager at all. And that's coming from someone who, I'm not going to hide, was very critical of him before his sacking. Because I'm not someone that just targets manager for the sake of it. I'm more someone that cares about the results and the performances of my football club. I don't care who's in the dugout. So when the results went poorly, things went sour, and it looked like we kind of cascading down to being extremely poor, and it seemed to be no way back. When he was sacked, it was a decision I agreed with. But Erik ten Hag and Ruben Amorim have been arguably worse. Amorim, definitely. Ten Hag at least got silverware and a 3rd place finish. So he's got some kind of redeeming factors in terms of that, but when it comes to him about his connection to the fans and the club and his stoic nature and his lack of charisma and his egregious press conferences at times and some of his decision making with certain personnel and his man management, that was the sort of thing that obviously Ole was great at. For me, I still would like United to go for, if possible, Luis Enrique or someone that is an extreme elite manager that's been there, managed at 2 different clubs in PSG and Barcelona, winning trebles at both, extremely good pedigree, national football as well. No matter how Ole does, if he's the one that becomes gaffer in the next 6 months, or even if it's Michael Carrick, because I'm going to get onto him in a sec now as well, is I believe that I do want it just to be a steadying ship, generate a feel-good factor, a squad under Ole that is capable with his style of football of finishing in the top 5 and possibly sneaking Champions League football. But even though the fans will be sentimental and emotional by the end of it and think, oh, we've got to go Ole Part 2 and make him permanent after a good interim period, feeling like he's earned it, I do kind of hear that. But at the same time, do you want lightning to strike twice negatively? And there will always be heightened pressure if United go that route as well. So I think it'd be a case of, if you think there's a better gaffer available after a decent Ole stint where he steadies things, or if it's Carrick either. By the time the summer comes around, if you have an Enrique available, or even an Nagelsmann if you want to go down that route, someone that's been there, done that at a big club, I still want United to remove the sentiment out of it and Ineos to make a decision that is best on the footballing side of things. And pick a manager that doesn't generally give us the highest floor, but gives us the highest ceiling. And that is always something that I'm kind of judging a manager on. And that's where I think maybe the likes of an Ole or maybe even a Carrick, they're capped. But the reports are quite conflicting, because Romano has said that there should be a meeting today. Laurie Whitwell has said something similar between Carrick and Ole, or maybe even a combination of the two, which I would actually like. I think they've worked together previously when McKenna was in the coaching group as well. I think the ideal thing would be for them both to arrive. I was actually leaning towards, if there was going to go for one or the other, just because Ollie's been here before. I thought Michael Carrick's 3-game stint that he had as interim manager a few years ago, I saw some really good things in it, and I thought it was impressive. He had a decent tenure at Middlesbrough as well, with very good underlying metrics. Showing himself to be a great, innovative manager. And funnily enough, some of the best managers that you ever see, especially in this day and age, and the best footballing minds, are players that played defensive midfield. It seems to be a bit of correlation with that. Players that have played in midfield, especially defensive midfield, at the base of a midfield, they quite often become great managers. I don't know if that's because of a position that is so cognitive and you need to be so smart, and you're almost like the main chess piece of a team. You've seen the likes of Rodri being that. See Busquets in the past. Even the likes of Declan Rice at Arsenal. Obviously Pep was a defensive midfielder as well. I think there's a couple more. I think Carrick is someone that gives me a bit of intrigue, where I'd actually like to see him have 6 months. If Ollie wants to be part of that, obviously the perfect marriage would be them two together. If Ollie does come and he's the one that's selected, I would like Carrick to be there with him as well. But that's definitely my take on it, which is interesting because Rob Dorset from Sky then came on and said, there won't be any sort of interviewing process today because the focus at Manchester United is on Burnley later on, which I do understand. But then the two bigger hitters like Laurie and Romano have said interviews are happening now. And then I think there was a Norwegian or a Nordic report that said Ollie's basically signed and it will be announced on Friday already. But I'm intrigued to find out what you are going to think about that. Because I think there's more to get out of the squad than Amrin was getting out of it. I think the personnel group is better suited to the likes of an Ollie and a Carrick, where you can go back to basics and simplify the principles and have a back four and put players in positions that are suited to them best. Kobe Mainoo, who had no future under Amrin, as one of our more talented academy graduates in recent years, now gets an opportunity to play in a midfield three and get more minutes as well, and actually have his development forwarded and not regressed. But I'm intrigued, I'm excited. I'm going to come back whenever there's reports about who's actually decisions are going to be made with. I'll be here to make a decision as well. I'll talk about it, I'll react to it straight away as quick as I can. But as we said at the start of this, the focus is on tonight. Manchester United, Burnley, first game post-Amarim, post-mortem. 3 points is needed. Might have Mainoo in the squad. Got Mount and Bruno back. The lads need to win. But remember to like, comment, subscribe, hype the video as well. And I will see you later for the Burnley review.